Tubthumping. I mean, some of you, I'm assuming, will know Tubthumping, but it's...
I was just saying to Phil, we've got to a point now where it's sort of 15 years ago, and half of you were probably just about being born 15 years ago. So there was a time when this song was the
they're a lot older than that, Boff.
Yeah, there was a time when this was like a song where you couldn't get in a Leeds taxi without the taxi driver knowing it. Whereas that era's gone, which I think is really interesting. So I think it now belongs to a certain time. But this song was written, and we had all the elements of the song, but we didn't have a chorus for it. So it was all about the drinking whiskey drink and pissing the night away, and it had some other lyrics in it which were really filthy and stuff. Basically what happened is that I was living in Chapeltown in Leeds. There was a local pub called the Fforde Green, and I used to love that pub because it was where lots of different people from different cultures went. It was a really scruffy, horrible pub, and the Sex Pistols played there, amongst other things, a long time ago. But it was really falling down, and there used to be this Irish bloke who lived next door to us. And he used to come home from that pub. We used to go to the pub and he'd be in there, and he would come home about 2 or 3 hours later because they always had a lock-in. And he would come stumbling up the street on a weekend. He was a lovely bloke, and he would be singing Danny Boy, which is a great old Irish song. And he would literally be falling on the floor, and we'd wake up in the middle of the night, you know, there he is again. He'd be falling, and then he'd be trying to get his key in the lock, and he couldn't get it in, and he'd have to knock on the door. And his wife would have to come and let him in. He was singing all the time. It was such a good time. And then on Monday morning he'd go, and I think he worked on the railway, and he hated his job. He used to go on about it, oh, it's horrible. But then on the weekends we knew him as this bloke that went out and had a really good time every weekend. So we wanted to write a song about that kind of general sort of resilience to having rubbish jobs, and the fact that people can go out on a weekend and still just really enjoy themselves. And we just thought it's a really nice, positive thing to sing about. And but we didn't have a chorus, and it all seemed very. It was just sort of rolling along in its own way. And I remember about 3 weeks while we were recording it, we were trying to come up with something that said something about this bloke, and what we came up with was just this really simple thing of, I get knocked down, but I get up again. And we just thought it's so simple, it's too simple, we can't use that. And we stuck with it because people said, no, that's really good because it's universal, and people will get it straight away, and they'll relate to it, because everyone just thinks, yeah, it's just about being positive in the face of having lots of trouble, and consequently it got played by lots of sports teams, football teams and everything, all over the world actually, and which we hadn't thought of at all. We'd never thought of it in a sport context, but of course it fit perfectly, especially for, we went to New York once, and we were introduced to the New York ice hockey team, who used to come out onto the ice every year for about 4 years to this tune. And you just think, well, of course it fits. It's about ice hockey, just getting knocked down but getting up again. And the idea that I could say, actually, it's about this Irish bloke that lived next door to me, and he used to be pissed out of his head on a Saturday night, and he couldn't get the key in the door. It wasn't something you said to these, you know, all these sports people who thought it was about, you know, getting up and fighting on. But again, it's that idea of taking something that's quite a universal, obvious thing, get knocked down, get up again. That draws people in, and then the rest of it, you can go off on a different tangent and make it balance it. In musical terms as well, what you do is the chorus is in major chords, and it's big, major, obvious chords, and then you come to the bit which is pissing the night away, and you have a female vocal singing in a minor chord, and suddenly it all goes down. It stops it being just a sort of boys together rock and roll jumping up and down song, which we would have to have in there, otherwise we wouldn't have done it. Okay, that's the story behind that one. As Phil said though, there is a level of interpretation in these songs that, you know, I wouldn't want anyone to go away and think, ah, right, I know what that song's about now, I'll just I'll draw a picture of an Irish bloke on the floor with his, you know, trying to get in his door, because I think that's too literal. I think that there's Elvis Costello, when he's asked what his lyrics mean, he just says they mean whatever you want them to mean. He always lets the reader or the listener try and work it out for themselves, which I don't always agree with. But I think that having, like you said, having some level of your own interpretation on things is really important, and things not being really obvious.